A very good morning to you on this 9th day of December. Countdown to the big days. We are live here on the Fifth Connection, and if you've joined us, you will become aware that we are tracking through the storyline of the Word of God. The storyline of the Bible, it's an unfolding story. It starts in Genesis, once upon a time, when God began creating the heavens and the earth, and it ends in the Eden of God, the garden of God, where really it is happily ever after. This morning we are in Ephesians chapter 5 and verse number 29. Marriage in the South African context. When you look at the latest figures, especially the 2023 census that was taken, since the 2025 trends are not out yet, there's a rise in late marriage, and there seems to be a new era of commitment on the rise, because there was a time when this milestone was reached in your early 20s, in the early 20s of young couples' lives. And now it's being postponed because careers, jobs, personal independence, and the like are sort of crashing into individuals' lives. So it's pushed further and further back. And there no longer is a bound of age, or it's not bounded by age, but more by readiness. And the global trends of tying the knot is shifting, and South Africa, of course, is no exception on this front. According to marriage and divorces statistics of 2023, it says that the median age for men, for the grooms, engaging in civil marriage in 2014 was 35. And brides were typically around about 30, 31. Now fast forward to 2023, and the median age has climbed to between 38 and 34 respectively. So people are getting into marriage a lot later. And there, of course, are challenges that go with that as well. It's not like you're out of the woods just because you marry later. And some would say, well, you're more sensible later. Well, some never gain sense. But be that as it may, marriage is on the decline. Few and few couples are saying, I do. And, of course, divorce, that horrible D word, is on the rise, because marriage attitudes are shifting. And you can check the South African consensus, or census rather. You can Google it and get all those ready facts. And it's quite an earth shaker. If you come out of the generation that I do, or prior to me, my parents' parents, patterns were very, very different. And so the rising divorce rate may suggest that South Africans are increasingly open to leaving unhappy marriages and not staying in it due to social pressures. And a few people are tying the knot, and others are delaying, of course, saying yes, saying I do. And so it's quite an evolving thing, this approach to marriage. And how is the assembly posturing to meet this challenge? Well, when you go into the biblical text, you find something very interesting. God doesn't change his mind. He's not given to change. the way people are, the way civilization is given to change. Because marriage, what is instructed, what is constructed, what is instituted is a supracultural thing. Of course, the church needs to do a good rethink on what is marriage in its essence. What is it? As far as I know, the government's involvement is, I couldn't see any other reason. My wife and I were chatting about the other day. They are more concerned about not people staying together, but what tax will or will not be paid when you move from singlehood to marriage. And so their interest is purely governmental. And where does the church sit with this whole thing of civil marriage, customary marriage, this cohabitation idea, soos ons sê in Afrikaans, vat en sit, where there's no public commitment before a magistrate, two people just agree in private, and they call that marriage. And of course, you get into the whole issue of gay marriage, and that's a discussion for another day. Is that marriage in the first instance? Well, when you look at God's battle formation in the culture, God's battle formation inside of a community, and in this case, a believing community, inside of a society, and I encourage you not to collapse these two words into each other. Society is not community, and community is not society. And then you go to civilization, that big monstrosity, and you look at how does marriage impact? How does this battle formation called the assembly impact civilization? How does it impact the culture, the community, the society, the province, the nation, and so on? Since it's God's battle formation, because Paul is engaging in war talk in chapter 6, which we are heading toward, verse number 10 to verse 24. And he's prepping the ground for the battle formations inside of this thing called the assembly, and what that battle formation looks like, what those battle formations look like. Because when the battle formations are decrepit and they become non-functional or defunct, what impact does that have on the culture? And he's right here, he's into marriage. We have been tracking this idea of mutual submission inside of the assembly. It's mutual submission, and inside of that context, Paul is going to discuss, or starts to discuss, the Huisgevellen texts, the household codes, what we call household order. Another way of saying it is, it talks about family matters. Yeah, because families matter. You could very well say, what's the matter with family? Since family matters so much to God and to the culture, and needs to matter inside of the believing community. And so here he's focusing on marriage. And he talks about in verse 31, maritally, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother. But in verse 29, he's going to back up into a man. No one ever hates their own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it just as Christ does the church. No one ever loves his own flesh less. We love our bodies. We love ourselves because we are given to nourishing it and cherishing it. These are two words that carry great endearment. Nourishing something. It's to be feeding it, giving it nutrients, cherishing it, keeping it warm. I think of gestation. Gestation is the period of, call it incubation, if you will. It takes 9 months for a baby to gestate inside of a mother's womb, where it is nourished and cherished in every possible way, given food, nutrients, an environment within which to develop. Well, that's how we nourish and cherish our own bodies in the period of gestation. Just as Christ does the church. You see, the appointed one does the same for the assembly. He allows the assembly to gestate, to constantly being in developmental mode. And as she develops, she's growing stronger and stronger and more strong. But you almost get the impression that the assembly's gestation sees her growing weaker and weaker and weaker. And there is a monkey dead on the line. And that is an episode for another day. But no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it. It allows flesh to develop and to gestate into something that's viable, more viable, constantly viable. Why? Because we are members of his body, because we are dependent extensions of his assembly. That's what the assembly is. There's unitary holism inside of the assembly. We are part of the family of God. And oh, how the body is bifurcated and getting smashed and getting ripped apart by factions, by schisms rent asunder, says the hymn writer, by heresies distressed. Yet saints their watch are keeping. Their cry goes up, how long? Oh, and the people of God are getting beaten around. We are members of one body, and we need to show that. And we show so little of that. Therefore, verse 31, therefore, a man geolocates when he gets married. A man shall leave his father and mother. Oh, again, we could spend hours on these texts because some men never leave. They are walking around with an umbilical cord in their hand looking for a place to attach it because they haven't severed their dependence. Boys haven't severed from mommy. Young men haven't severed from mommy. Adult men have not severed the cord and swinging that umbilical cord looking for a place to plug it in because they cannot stand up on their two hind legs. A man shall leave. There's a severance that takes place. The umbilical cord is either torn or cut. And think of as adults, how we cringe when we look at that and think of that picture. The umbilical cord is cut because now they slap the baby on the bottom and he or she cries to take their first breath. A man shall leave his parents and hold fast to his wife. Stick to his wife. Deur dik en dun. 7 sakke sout. 7 maarjare. 7 vet jare, as we would describe it in Afrikaans. And hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh across a lifetime. They grow in their oneness. Unitary holism. They are individuals with an identity, but now they are unified. And again, each of these 3 concepts in verse 31 could take hours to unpack. But there's severance. A man leaves. There's adherence. A man cleaves. He sticks to his wife. And there's one flesh. Soul oneness. Therefore, a man geolocates from his physical creator, from mommy and daddy. From his physical creator and matrix. That's the mommy pattern. And clings to his wife. and the two shall become one souled. Ah, these are heavy, heavy issues. They are supracultural principles. They apply in any and every culture at any time or place. And when we walk away from this pattern, chaos results. As a husband, have you left the matrix? Have you left your daddy? Have you left father and mother and become an independent unity together with your wife, an interdependent entity? Because you're still not an island, even as a husband and wife together. You're going to have opportunities as a man today to man up, because that's what this section is all about, going from verse number 18 all the way through, and now in verse number 31. And I'm not technically given to just verse by verse unpacking of these texts, but they are so loaded, and to zip right by these key things is criminal. Because out of gestation comes unitary holism in a marriage. You will have opportunities today, husband, to make decisions. And yeah, you won't always get it right. Sometimes you'll get it dead wrong, but you have to man up and face the consequences of decisions that you make together. Ultimately, you are responsible. There's no place to hide here. Big boys, boys who've come of age, man up. Take the opportunities today as they come by and experience God's enabling as you take the challenge to be what He's called you to be as a husband and as a male, standing up and taking initiative. I trust that you will enjoy the day as you go with God. Goodbye for now.